Hello, everyone, and welcome to South Africa's first Type 1 Ask Me Anything. We are so excited to be here. I'm going to keep repeating the same things as people join. But yeah, welcome. Mostly, guys, I'm so excited that we get to talk about Type 1 for a change because, as you all know, there are so many more people with Type 2, and so we have to talk about Type 2 most of the time, but there are things that people with Type 1 have to deal with like on a daily basis that we all know about dealing with on a daily basis. And I love that we just get to hang out for an hour and talk about it. So first of all, a disclaimer that I'm going to continue repeating over and over. None of us are medical experts. So please don't take any of this advice as medical advice. Don't make any changes to your medication until you've spoken to your doctor. So we have an amazing panel here, and I'm going to let them all introduce themselves in a minute. What I love about this panel is that we've put it together on purpose with people who are at very different stages of their diabetes journey. So Matthew, for example, his son was only diagnosed with Type 1 a couple of months ago. Alyssa's been living with Type 1 for 2 and a bit years. Tuppy wins the prize. She's been living with Type 1 for 15 years. And so we've got a lot of experience here, but we also are, like you guys, trying to figure it out as we go along. There's nothing, there's no magic cure. I wish there was a magic cure, or at least a magic wand. So let's get started. Our first tip for the day, I'm asking each of the people on our panel to share their most helpful Type 1 tip. And for everyone in the audience, we can see your comments coming up on the side, which is so rad, very exciting. And if you want to share your most helpful Type 1 tip, please do as well. I'm going to start because I still have the stage. For me, my life changed when I realized that you could keep a juice box next to your bed. And then when your blood sugar went low in the night, you didn't have to get up and walk to the kitchen and eat the whole fridge. You could just reach out and drink the juice box. Guys, this is like a revelation. It was a total revelation for me. Because then you go brush your teeth, come back to bed, go to sleep after the 5 minutes it's taken to drink your juice box and brush your teeth. And then you don't wake up with a headache in the morning because that only happens if the sugar hasn't kicked in. So one more time. Welcome to South Africa's first Type 1 Ask Me Anything. And we are introducing our panel now with what's your most helpful Type 1 tip. Kirsten, please take it away.
Hello everyone, I'm Kirsten, Type 1 diabetic for 10 years. My most helpful Type 1 tip would just be the power of walking. Often people say, oh, diabetics can't eat that, but every now and then I like to treat myself, and the thing that I do after that is always go for a walk. It really, really helps to get your insulin moving around your body, and yeah, it's just one of the best tips I've had. If you see your sugar levels start edging upwards, it's time to just go for a little stroll, and it's really helpful.
Great tip. Earl, what have you got for us?
Hi everyone, I'm Earl. Been a Type 1 diabetic for the past 9 years, and what usually works for me, let's say I wake up with a high blood sugar and I'm hungry. You see, that's always a problem with us Type 1s when you have high sugar and you're also starving. So then what normally works for me is I'll eat a high protein meal. So I'll either do like just boiled eggs, or I'll just do, piece of fish, maybe like with some salad. Just as a disclaimer, I'm no dietitian, but I'm just sharing what works for me.
Great. Thanks, Earl. Matthew, what about you? You have had a couple of months living with Type 1. What's your most helpful tip?
We're in month 7 now, I think. It's just flying by. For me, the most helpful thing has been communicating with people and not being scared to communicate. Like how I met you, Bridget. I saw that you had a Freestyle Libre on your arm, walking on the side of the road, and I just took the off chance because I was like, okay, Jude has just started that. I might be able to learn from this person, and that's my motto and my goal is to try and learn as much as I can from everyone and communicate. And that's
so great. Can I also just tell a hilarious story that is hilarious at my expense? I was walking with a friend of mine who knows that Sweet Life is like all I do all day long. And so this guy pulls over and is like, hey, what's that thing on your arm? And I was like, yeah, it's the Libre. I love it. And then I was like, I actually run Sweet Life. And he was like, oh, okay. And I was like, Diabetic South Africans on Facebook. And he was like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. And my friend was laughing behind me. She thought it was the funniest thing. And then I found out that actually his son was only diagnosed a couple of weeks before. So I was like, well, that's okay. Get a month before you have to know about it. Tuffy, what have you got? What's your most helpful tip?
It's patience. For me, I think I wouldn't have done 15 years without patience. So patience is key with diabetes, and especially type 1. One moment it's 2.0, the next it's 25.5, and you're like, yeah. So yeah.
You're like,
patience.
yeah, that's the only thing you can say about that. You're like,
yeah.
And what about you, Alyssa?
Hi everyone. I'm a new baby to diabetes. I'm only diagnosed for 2.5 years now. My tip is that these things are fizzers. They put up your sugar really quickly. I have them everywhere, tons in my bag, next to my bedside, in the bathroom, everywhere, every single room. There is fizzers.
That is a great tip. I never think about fizzers. I have sugar packets in my cubby hole of my car because you can leave them in there for months and nothing happens. Okay, guys, we got so many questions from your registrations. Thank you so much. Way many than we can answer here, especially because I want to encourage you all to ask questions live as well. But we also got some that we can't answer because we're not medical specialists. So there are some of the questions I have articles that are on Street Life that can help, so I can email that to you tomorrow. I see someone was asking about the difference between type 1 and type 2, things like that. We can answer easily on email. Some we can just discuss here, and then some are too medical for what we know. So we are thinking about organizing an Ask Me Anything with an endocrinologist, which would be great, teacher, because then I can also get all my questions answered, because there are so many things, obviously, that we all want to know about diabetes. But to get started, I wanted to give you a chance to get to know each of our panelists a little bit better, because they are just amazing, each of them in their own right. So I'm going to call Kirsten up first. And Kirsten, could you tell us what made you change your attitude towards diabetes? Because you had kind of a dramatic turning point in your diabetes journey, I think.
Yes, so for those who don't know about my story, basically got diagnosed 10 years ago. In the beginning, I found it very easy to adjust to because I had this wonderful support system. I had my friends and family who kind of took everything on with me. And that was still when I was in high school. And then the transition to, college, and then starting my first job and all those sorts of things. It's a time in your life when you're meeting a whole bunch of new people, you're out of routine, you're adjusting to a new lifestyle. There's a lot of temporary people in that sort of stage of your life. It's people that you're not willing to talk to about something as big as diabetes and how to manage your diabetes and what you're feeling about your diabetes. So slowly but surely, I stopped talking about my diabetes, and it became my sole responsibility. I never talked about it to anyone. I took it on all by myself. And it was about 2 years in that I'd been doing that, and I started to prick my finger, and I started noticing sugar levels that made me extremely disappointed in myself. Obviously, I had no one to turn to. I knew that my friends were going through big changes in their lives, and I felt like I couldn't burden them with the fact that I was now facing these sugar levels, and I had no idea what to do with them. And so I just stopped testing. I thought, you know what? If I'm not testing, I'm not seeing ugly sugar levels, so I'm just going to go by what I feel. I know when my sugars are high, I know when my sugars are low, and I just left it like that. And you can imagine how terrible I was feeling after a year of not testing my sugar levels, kind of injecting and hoping for the best, chasing the highs and lows. I was feeling sick all of the time. I was probably vomiting 3 times a week because my sugar levels were high. I was probably, I would say, depressed in a phase of burnout or diabetes distress. I started getting a numbness and tingling in my toes. My weight was fluctuating. I was just in a very, very bad place, but I had no idea how to get out. At that time, I knew one type 1 diabetic, but we weren't really close, so I really didn't know where to turn to. I didn't know where to start. And so I decided to start documenting my journey. I started an Instagram page, and it was more for myself in the beginning. It was more about me talking about my diabetes again, and I started connecting with people all over the world, type 1 diabetics, and slowly but surely, which was even better, is these type 1 diabetics started popping up out of everywhere in South Africa, in Cape Town, and I was like, no, like there's more of me. This is so exciting. It was just the weirdest thing and the most empowering thing to know that there were people out there who knew exactly what I was going through, and it kind of empowered me to take my diabetes journey on and to walk with other people through this instead of just taking it on solely on my own. Along with that, obviously, was the introduction to CGM or flash glucose monitors in South Africa, and that really, really helped my journey. Having more access to data, it gave me so much more insight into my diabetes management and enabled me basically to take my diabetes on instead of it being in control. I could not be in control. So I would say community was the one thing that completely changed my attitude towards diabetes. And then also having better technology and access to better information that I could then make better changes in my life.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I've had such a similar experience because it lets you feel empowered. Like you're not just randomly checking and seeing a number and you don't really know what it's related to. You're seeing something and you can see what your graph has been doing for the hours before and when you ate, how that affected it. Rizka's just had a question and I would like to see if we can help. My son is 7 and diagnosed last September. That's also still so new. Been having so many highs the past few weeks. Last night before his last NAC injection, his blood sugar was 17.9. Oh, shame. I just lost it because I couldn't explain to him or myself why it was so high. Sometimes I feel so guilty when his sugar readings are so high. He's a child, so how do I say no for everything that he feels like eating? I mean, geez, kids with diabetes is so hard. I don't really have too much to say here, so I'm going to hand over to Matthew. But before I do, the one piece of advice I have whenever people tell me that their blood sugar is high and they don't know why, is to switch out your insulin pen for a new one. I'm like kind of obsessive about switching out insulin pens for a new one because I don't think any of us realize how sensitive our insulin is to heat. And even if the it's just fluctuations in heat and slight fluctuations, if your insulin denatures, then it doesn't work. So I would say that is an option. Matthew, have you got any tips? Does anything work for you? How do you say no to Jude when he feels like eating things? Or do you say no? I don't know.
We do say no. In terms of that, like we struggle with that a lot. This week we've had a good week, but last week we had exactly that same thing. And you know, it was the first cold day of winter. I don't know if that was a part of it. He was getting a cold, which came on, and then he's since gotten over that. So that was definitely part of it. When he gets sick, we do our best to fight the highs and the lows. But it's a roller coaster until we're through the illness. He's also growing all the time. I mean, I'm not a doctor, so we also go through those stages. Like last week we thought, is the insulin actually working? It seems like it's not. And this week we have the same pen and it's working. So we finger prick and just make sure that the sensor's not out. But we kind of just have to trust that, you know, it's going to get better. And it usually has. And we usually come to some sort of conclusion that it was a bug or something like that Jude's had. Maybe it's worth looking into, like, do growth spurts affect blood glucose? Because I've heard that they could, but I again, we're not doctors, so I don't know. In terms of telling Jude what he can and can't eat, we're just brutal with it. I mean, it's just something that he has to deal with. We try and make him as many healthy snacks, and we've got a whole bunch of recipes. Like, so we make him chocolate cookies and banana bread, and we have that sort of stuff on hand, and it's free. And then try and say, like, okay, well, you can save something for when your bloods are a bit lower. And then, you know, but you know, it's tricky with a kid who wants to eat an apple right now. And yeah, we just try our best. That's the best I can offer.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're all doing, right? It's just, I think it's so much harder. I was diagnosed when I was 25. I understood what protein and carb was. Like, to have to do it with a kid must be so difficult. I'm going to hand over to Tapi in 1 minute. I just want to say, Watson has just said, have been waiting for this opportunity. And I'm right there with you, Watson. Okay, Tapi, tell us, what made you decide to speak up about living with diabetes? Tapi is an influencer, guys, a real live influencer, like on Instagram with thousands of followers who love everything she does. And I think it's so interesting for those of us mere mortals like me, who don't have that kind of following. It's a real decision, right? To decide that you are going to speak up about living with a chronic condition. And I'd love to hear what made you decide to do that.
Okay, so for me, it was very difficult, like growing up. I also just wanted to answer to that question with this the child as well. I got diagnosed when I was 6, and it was tough. It was really tough. I think for my mom as well, it was tough for her to be like, you know what, I'm going to be strict on you. But I think one thing we did as well is, to eat in portions. My mom cut out sweets, totally, yes. And, certain things were tough and stuff like that. But I think with my mom being there for me, it really did help. And, the support structure and everything, because I didn't have a support structure. I was just like one person. My family didn't understand, except my parents. We didn't know diabetes at all. And it was like, okay, yeah, this is it. This is diabetes and you need to be like, you need to go full on. And for me to really start speaking about it, it was because of no support. I remember there was a time when I was sitting in a room, and it was just type 2s, and I was the only type 1, and it was like, okay, yeah, now this is you, and they don't understand the same things. People were talking about alcohol, and I was only like, I think I was 13 at the time, and I was like, okay, I think I'm in the wrong place. So for me to start speaking about it, it was because there was no support. Firstly, I was living in a small town in Polokwane, and I still do live in Polokwane right now. And because of that, I think I just wanted to talk more about it. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go out there and be the very best person I can be. Through my experience, I want to inspire the next person. And I used Instagram because, well, I didn't want to like have 2 separate accounts. I wanted to have like one account and to show that yes, I am diabetic, but I can go out with my friends and I can do this and that, and I'm going to go on holiday and still be a diabetic. And so for me, that kind of inspired my whole Instagram story and just my whole thing with working with brands as well. I was like, okay, you know what? I know it's unlike Polokwane, there aren't so many people, like aren't so many brands that cater for diabetes. So you know what? I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna look for those brands and try to work with them. And that kind of helps as well because now I work with a lot of brands, and now I think people know of more diabetic friendly brands. And yeah, that was just it basically.
That's great. Thank you. I love it. I've seen Lauren. You mentioned before that your daughter, your daughter has diabetes, and you're living with the ups and downs of every day. One day is fine, and the next day isn't. And wow, I really just hear you. And it's so interesting that happens with kids as well, because I assumed and have always blamed it on being a woman. And so every week is different because your cycle changes every week. But if you've got a 4-year-old boy that's happening to, then we just have to blame diabetes. We can't be blaming our cycles. Lauren said, one problem I have is at school that other parents don't keep their sick kids at home and don't realize that my child has to go to hospital when she gets sick. That's a challenge for us. That is a huge challenge. And I mean, I know because I have kids that people really just want their kids to go to school no matter what. And the thing is that even if it's a small sickness, when you're living with diabetes, it's a small sickness and your sugar can go through the roof just from a cold, which is so hectic. Alyssa, can you tell us, what do you wish you were told what do you wish you'd been told when you were diagnosed? Because your diagnosis is still fairly recent memory for you, I'm sure.
Well, I wish I knew more about diabetes, type 1 diabetes. Awareness is so scarce nowadays. Even my family didn't understand it as well as they do now. And that's only because I have it. I wish the world knew more, and that's why I'm trying my best to raise awareness so that people become more familiar with type 1 diabetes, and most importantly, that it just doesn't affect older people. We young ones
Yeah.
have it.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thanks, Alyssa. And now finally, and then I promise we're going to move on to all the other questions you sent in. Earl, tell us, how has living with diabetes changed your life? Earl has one of the coolest and most dramatic diagnosis stories I've ever heard. We featured it on our Instagram as a story. He was like mid-air on the way to America being diagnosed with diabetes. Terrifying. But how has it
Thanks,
changed your life?
Bridget. Yeah, I was actually going to touch on that story though. I mean, look, being diagnosed at a late age, at the age of 26 in September 2012, for me, like I've already known, a certain young adult life, and I could come and go as I please, eat at any time of the day, don't have to check glucose before I drive, or just at any point in my day actually, and it was just like a total mind shift for me after diagnosis, and I actually just want to break it down on 3 levels. On a personal level. Well, let's start with work actually. Having to just make sure that if you're going into a long meeting, you eat enough, meal prepping for that day to avoid going low. And if you do go low, making sure that you have all your snacks so that you can just, subtly just eat your snacks in the meeting without causing much of a disturbance. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. And also just in terms of work travel, like Bridget mentioned, I got diagnosed on my way to the States, and I was actually traveling there for work. And, I went back in 2019, and I must say I had to, first of all, go on the airline's website. I had to request diabetic-friendly meals, diabetic-friendly in inverted commas, because not everything they gave was diabetic-friendly, but it was a bit better than, a roll and cheese or whatever. And just preparing, making sure I have enough strips, making sure, my sensors are there. And, Americans work with different machines that measures in milligrams per deciliter, like that. So I had to make sure that, and actually I had to buy a whole new machine over there, because with the sensors, I also do finger pricks, in between, just to make sure that they align. And then on a personal level, in terms of just driving, going to the shops, one of my hobbies is music as well. So I play in a band part-time, and having to actually make sure that I check my glucose before we play a gig, or like somewhere in the middle of a gig. It's just things that regular people, without diabetes don't have to think about. And also with physical activity, before working out, you need to check before and midway and after. And just generally, I think there's pros and cons to how diabetes has actually changed my life. The cons of, just like a lack of sleep, you just need to be extra careful. It definitely, will cause some mental strain. So, I mean, for the viewers, if they've been feeling that way, you're not alone. We all feel it with you. And also, like in terms of injuries, the slow healing. But the pros, though, I mean, look, I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life in terms of just making healthier dietary choices. I don't get sick as much anymore. Like I don't get like a lot of colds and flu because of the lifestyle change that I've made. And also, being diabetic also provides you with an opportunity to advocate and to educate people and to actually challenge yourself. Like for me personally, what I battled with in the beginning was the anxiety around, just playing sport, or maybe going on a long drive, even locally, driving around for too long. I always worry like, oh, am I going to go low? Or, what do I do if I go low? So I had a lot of anxiety around that. But now I actually challenge myself, like if you do maybe take a trip overseas, or if you're going to do sports, it's always like see it as a challenge for yourself that, look, I'm not going to let diabetes limit me from doing the things that I love. And I think the most, you know, the thing that I enjoy most is like, you know, if you really don't want to be at a function, you can always use diabetes as an excuse to leave early. You can just you can just say like,
Oh,
look,
that's
you know,
genius.
I'm not feeling too good. Go and give away all my secrets. So,
Guys, let's just end it here because that's all
yeah,
you need
that's
to
all
know.
from my
If you
side.
need a good excuse for getting out of things, just use diabetes as an excuse. I don't do that. That's so
I
smart.
know.
I need to do that more. Okay, we're going to dive into your questions now. There are such great comments coming through, guys. I love it. And I just want to say again that parents of kids with diabetes, I think you guys are superstars because to have to understand, it's like you've gotten a whole extra degree in the health management, but the stakes are so high, and I just think you're amazing. Okay, and let me throw in my disclaimer. None of us are medical experts. So please don't take any advice you share this evening as gospel. Rather speak to your doctor or endocrinologist. Although I did see that George was saying the endocrinologists don't know as much as the parents, and that is sadly probably true because we're living with it 24/7, 365. Okay. Kate wanted to know, does anyone have any tips for preventing or stopping the overtreatment of a hypo? If I have a really bad low, I can eat the entire kitchen at once, eat a whole loaf of bread. And Susie had the same question. I once treated a low with chocolate ice cream. And let me tell you what a terrible idea that was, because it was just a tub of chocolate ice cream and I had a spoon and then the tub was no longer and I couldn't get my blood sugar down for hours. So, Tuppy or Kirsten, who wants to take this one? We have a couple of questions about lows. Raise your hand.
Tuppy, you can go.
Okay, Tuppy, all yours.
Okay.
Do you have any tips for preventing overeating when you go low?
Okay, well, for me, I've never been like an overeater. I know when to stop, but that's because my mom was so mean to me in terms about like weight and stuff. So I think it really does work when she's mean, like don't overeat and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I don't really have to.
No, I can dig it. I like that Alyssa said she has fizzes everywhere. My tip that I have is to have, I read in, last year I read this amazing diabetic book with like very practical tips. It's a free one actually. I'll share the link afterwards. And he said, don't ever treat a low with food. And I thought that was genius. So treat it with glucose. So like glucose powder is amazing. Or I do sometimes treat it with Milo powder, which is kind of the same thing as glucose powder, but delicious. Or like a juice box because it's already a predefined size. Or the other amazing tip I got was jelly beans are 1 gram of carb each. So if you have a mild low, like 6 or 7 jelly beans will be enough. And if you have Super C's, that's the other one that's brilliant. But you got to have something that's like pre-portioned so that you know when to stop. And something that isn't too delicious. I think Super C's work because they kind of taste like chalk. And I think jelly beans work for me because I don't like them. And so I'm like, I'm going to eat more of these. Yeah, if they were Smarties, I'd be like, oh, chocolate ice cream. Okay, Charlene wants to know, we have such good news to share that Charlene's question is asking about. She said, will the medical aid schemes reconsider adding the Abbott flash device to the care plans going forward? It eases the depression my daughter has when it comes to finger pricking in order to eat a meal or a snack. So for those who don't know, Discovery offers this already. That was our big win from last year with the finger stick free campaign. Discovery offers a CGM benefit where for a certain copay, depending on the level you're at, you can get 2 Freestyle Libre sensors a month. But Matthew, are you on the edge of your seat? I know you're on Momentum. Momentum is about to offer it. Hopefully, we're not allowed saying exactly what, but word on the very reliable street is that Momentum is next. And even better, it's not only for type 1s, they are also going to have something for type 2s, which is amazing. It may not be a predefined benefit this year because they only put those in at a certain time, but it would be like if you ask for it, you'll get it. In the meantime, I've been told specifically that if you're on Momentum, you must ask your doctor to write a motivation because they will cover the Libre for you, which is great news. Okay, next question. Fernholt said the monthly consumables for, we got a lot of CGM questions. The monthly consumables for the Guardian Connect Elite Glucose Sensor are very expensive. Are there any other affordable devices on the market? Matthew, maybe you want to take this one because you guys tried a couple of things in the beginning, didn't you?
We did. We tried the Guardian, and having a 4-year-old, it's a bit too fiddly. Like he would pull it out, and there's too many parts to go in. So we use the Freestyle Libre, and it's single punch in, and it works so well. And on the Momentum thing, they have started to cover us, but they cover one sensor a month on our plan.
Come on.
Yeah.
That doesn't do it.
It's a start, I suppose, but yeah,
Okay.
I didn't know that. What's the other one? I didn't know
Discovery?
that Discovery. I didn't know that they covered both. That's
Yeah. So
really
Lauren was just asking what option on Discovery. I'm on the lowest possible. I'm on hospital plan. I think Kirsten is too.
Yeah.
And you can get 2 sensors on hospital plan for a copay of $780 a month. So instead of $2,000 a month, it's $780. I mean,
okay.
I do think, yeah. I mean, it's a good deal. But
Bridget,
that's kind of close to what we get because they give us $9.90 off. So they and no copay. So it's close. It's within a couple $100. Discovery's still trumping Momentum there,
but not for long.
Not for long.
Yeah.
So that's cool. And we have had to jump through a whole bunch of hoops to get it.
And so apparently they're going to make it very easy.
Okay, cool.
Great. Sorry, Kirsten, did you want to say something?
I just want to say on the Discovery plan, wasn't it written in that it's for all children under 18 on all of the plans except for Key Care? It is free.
Yes, so Key Care is not included. You're right. Sorry, the kids thing is better. So if you have kids, it's half of that. So if you're on hospital plan with kids, it's $390 and you get 2 a month. And if you're on the top 2 tiers, I've got this all in an article. I'll share it tomorrow. But if you're on the top 2 tiers, then it's free for kids and $390 for adults. No, that's it. That's actually all I need to share. So it's either $390 or $780. $780 is the worst you could pay for 2. But Momentum is going to tell us soon. I think within the next couple of weeks. The other medical aids, guys, here's the secret. I can actually tell this is so helpful that everyone is here together. The reason we were able to get Discovery first is that Kirsten and I are both on Discovery, and a medical aid will only make these things happen if their patients advocate directly to them. So if you're with a medical aid, like Tuppy, I think you're ready to start fighting this fight for yours. If you're with a medical aid and you want to make sure that you get covered for the Freestyle Libre or for any CGM, we're saying the Freestyle Libre because it's the most reasonable one on the market, and so it's kind of an easier sell to them. And it's the entry level CGM, unless you need alarms and all of that. It's the easiest to use, and it's the entry level. I love it. But if you want to be the voice for getting CGM on your medical aid, then contact me, sweetlife.org.za, and we can connect you with the right people. But we need a champion, a patient champion per medical aid, because they won't talk to us. We've tried and they won't talk to us. But if you're the patient champion, they have to talk to you because you're a member. It's like inside knowledge that we're learning. Okay. Nolitando and Kate both asked about type 1 and pregnancy, possible complications and how to prevent them. I'm going to very briefly say here that it is completely possible to have a perfectly normal, healthy pregnancy with type 1. I had 2 healthy pregnancies with type 1. You have to be super, super, super controlled. Your HbA1c has to be 6 and below if possible. So it's like a very dedicated sprint for 9 months. But it is completely possible to do. You just have to work very closely with your endocrinologist. And obviously, if you have a CGM or flash device, it makes life a lot easier, because I think they weren't in South Africa when I was pregnant. And so I was just finger pricking 10 times a day. Let me tell you what my fingers look like at the end of 9 months. Okay. Sadia said, how do I accept that this is my new life? It's been 6 years and I still feel so lost. What we got, guys?
I think having the support as well is quite key. And I think as the diabetic community, we have grown, so that kind of really does help as well. So you can reach out to any one of us, and that will sort of be a stepping stone for you.
Absolutely. I agree, because I think you feel lost, or I know for me, I felt lost when I felt like I was the only one. And so we are very clearly not the only ones if we're all here. Another one for you, Matthew. How do I help my type 1 to cope well? Or actually, Matthew or anyone who has any tips for us, how do I help my type 1 to cope well at school without stressing about his sugar all the time?
I can't answer that, I'm afraid, because Jude is 4 and
Jude's too little.
Yeah, he's too little. So this year we decided we're going to keep him at home and try and figure this out for the year. Yeah, so I'm sorry I can't help, but I'm sure I'm reading the comments. Everyone is being so helpful. And there's one question.
To read the comments and talk at the same time.
Yeah, Jude does get tummy cramps most days. He complains about sore tummy.
Really?
Yeah, that was one question. From? I don't know. I'm here to learn from everybody else.
I know. How strange. I wonder if anyone knows the answer to that. We, again, are not medical specialists, so we don't. Leanne wanted to know, after diagnosis, how difficult was it to adapt to a new lifestyle? What have you got for us, Alyssa? Did you have to make a lot of big changes?
Yes, it takes a lot of patience. And I think that what scared me was having high sugars. So I forced myself to actually stay in routine. And with that force, I guess it got me used to not eating the rice, the bread, the pasta. So now, like, I cheat, but I also, like, I know I don't really crave those stuff anymore. So adjusting to it takes time and patience, but you have to sometimes force yourself.
Yeah, it's such a discipline thing, hey, which is so exhausting sometimes. So one of the big questions we got a lot, Bernadine also asked us, was how diabetes affects mental health. And yeah, let's talk about that for a little bit. Kirsten, what you got?
I think, one thing I've learned is that, like, even though I'm doing much better now and I'm managing it a lot better, some weeks you do so well and it's like you're excited because you finally feel like you got it all figured out. And then the week after, all of a sudden you're high again and you're out of range and you're like I'm doing nothing differently. I'm doing everything good to you. Even just last week, I was shouting at my pancreas because I was like, I just went for a 6-kilometer walk. Why are you spiking? Like, it can be extremely frustrating some days. And I think it's important. I actually once saw a quote that said, check on yourself as much as you check on your sugar levels, because it's really important to actually just sit back and be like, you know what? You're doing your best. Today is not a good day. Tomorrow is another day. Like, it's just every single day that I have a bad day, I just remember tomorrow is another day to try. And it's okay if you're not happy. It's okay if you're angry. It's okay if you're really, really, really not in the mood for diabetes today, because tomorrow is a new day. And I kind of just take sleep as like eating the slate and starting over again tomorrow.
Yeah. And you know what's so interesting to me is that if you look at it practically, highs and lows happen when we miscalculate, right? So we either miscalculate the effects of food on our blood sugar, or we miscalculate the amount of insulin we should have taken, or like it's just a math problem. And when I make rice in the microwave and the bowl boils over every single time I make rice in the microwave, I don't get like pissed at myself and like, oh, come on, why is the rice overboiling? I'm just like, oh, well, I didn't calculate the right thing. But when it's blood sugar, it feels so personal. And I think that's also what we need to do, is just forgive ourselves a little bit more, because it's such a tough job being able to manage a pancreas on top of everything else. There we go, Lisa. You're saying it so much better than me. After 28 years of living with diabetes, it's important to remember we all have bad days or weeks or months. It's just to start and do it again. Yeah, because that's all we can do, because it's not going to go away, unfortunately. I would love to know if you guys have any tips on balance. So the one question we got from, I wrote down the names and then I stopped after 4 because everyone had the same question. Noemi, Lisang, Vincent, Priscilla, they're all talking about swings from high to low, or like high blood sugar that won't come down. any tips for keeping things more stable? Oh, I'm hoping you know something that you can throw in the pile here.
I was actually just thinking about that question now, like I was thinking like I want to answer this because look, apart from type 1 diabetes, I was hospitalized in 2019 in August, and they actually diagnosed me with chronic autoimmune hepatitis. So in other words, it's like it affects my liver, right? So I've got like inflammation of the liver in simple terms. And how do they treat that? Prednisone pills. And type 1 diabetics know what corticosteroids do, So for me, in terms of just, finding that balance, I mean, like you said, Bridget, it's just that, like the miscalculation, it's for me, what I do is I try not to take large amounts of insulin at once. But in order to do that, you have to obviously eat a diet that sort of complements that, right? But in terms of dealing with the cortex, so what the for the viewers, what the prednisone does is like it blocks the effects of insulin, right? So let's say I eat something, I take insulin, but I've also taken my corticosteroids like 4 hours prior to that. I know I might have to inject a little more because if I inject too little, then it's like not going to have any effect. So I think, look, just dealing with type 1 diabetes is just a constant mathematical chemistry equation, that just doesn't have the same formula every day. You can try the same formula, but you're going to get different results every day. So I think my tip would be to actually just really listen to your body, check the patterns that actually start to unfold in terms of what you eat, what you take, how that affects it. You can try it again, and it's just a constant fine-tuning game, and most importantly, don't let diabetes win. That would be my tip.
Yeah. No, that's great. To me, as you were talking, I was trying to think if there was anything that I'd found helpful, and the injecting 15 minutes before has been a game changer for me. Although actually a lot of the time it's even more than 15 minutes before, which blows my mind. I'll inject and wait for on my reader or on my app, I'll wait to start seeing the dip and then eat then. And what's amazing there is that then the time the food takes to get into your system is the same time. It's like meeting your insulin rather than having to spike first, which I find helpful. Yeah. And the other thing, but it's so boring, is I eat the same thing for breakfast and lunch every day. I'm naturally boring when it comes to food, so that's okay. Dinner's like a highlight, and I found the world's greatest breakfast and lunch as far as I'm concerned. But if you can just not have to guess the same thing, like if you know exactly what it is, that helps. The world's greatest breakfast is actually thanks to Kirsten. That Nomu sugar-free hot chocolate, if you stir it into plain yogurt, it's like chocolate mousse for breakfast with almonds, because that's the protein anchors it down. It's fabulous. My kids are like, so how come you get to have pudding for breakfast? And I'm like, oh, sorry, the diabetes. Sorry. Okay, Geordie was saying, I want to get in on the comments conversation. Geordie wanted to know if you're diabetic and your partner isn't, your new partner, but it's getting to a point where you want to kind of explain things to them more. How do you do that? So I cannot contribute here because my husband's brother is a type 1. So he was like, you're going to have to jab, you'll be fine. He was the least sympathetic man on earth. Who can offer that? How do you bring up diabetes with a new partner? Kirsten. Oh, love it.
Go ahead, Kirsten.
From my side, I've also been dating over the last year or so. And I think like in the beginning, you kind of keep it to yourself because it is quite a lot for someone to take in. I generally do tell them from the beginning because it's a bit awkward when they want to set up a date and you're like, they're like, can we meet at 8 o'clock? And you're like, well, I eat dinner at 6. So like, it's out of my routine. So that's not going to work. Like, it's quite funny, just obviously because they notice the sensor. So they often ask what the sensor does. Obviously, they don't think it does what it does at all. They think my mother tracks me through it or something like that. And then as the relationship develops, I generally start talking about it a bit more. And I find that you generally get a vibe from them. So I remember one guy saying to me, you talk about your diabetes a lot. And I was like, okay, I'm out. I'm gone. I was like, I need to talk about my diabetes a lot. This is like, it affects everything.
The door on your way out, buddy.
I'll never forget it. I never saw him again. But I think you kind of just, you start talking about it a bit more and you start gauging. Obviously, you don't go and like give them a handbook and be like, right, you need to learn everything because we don't know everything.
I'll be quizzing you tomorrow.
Yeah, get them a little bit involved here and there, get them to understand what a low is, what a high is, get them to understand the things that irritate you that other people say, like you can't eat that, or how to rather encourage you rather than telling you what to do. It's just the way that people speak to you, encourage you rather than make you feel like you're not doing the right thing.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Kirsten. Oh, what can you add?
I actually realized that I'd be pretty useless in answering this because when I was diagnosed, I was already, my wife, my then girlfriend, I was already dating her for about a year and a bit. So she was kind of like stuck with me already. But what I can say is, that I think like, look, you're trying to find a way to tell the person you're diabetic and try and explain. I think just deal with it in little phases. And I think like, don't make this big thing about it. I think just be like, look, I'm type 1 diabetic. I'll give you the memo as we go along. Simple and plain. And in that way they learn, it's like on the job learning. You're not going to put them through a whole training program because nothing's really going to stick. Yeah. They just have to see how you deal with things on a day-to-day basis. Yeah.
And they'll pick up your cues because they'll recognize how much you want to talk about it or how much your life is. Lynn was saying about the injecting thing, also make sure you inject before and not after. I was always told to inject before, but I was surprised how much before is necessary to actually have an impact, because you're right, Lynn, otherwise it feels like you're chasing highs and lows the whole time. Amanda wanted to know, and I want to talk about this a little bit because, again, it's one of those things we can only talk about with type 1s. Is it possible to fear hypos to a point where even just the thought of them cripples you? And I think that fearing hypos is hectic and can lead us then to be running a lot higher. I had one stage where I had 2 super scary hypos when my son was 6 weeks old, and breastfeeding wreaks havoc with your blood sugar. And I remember just feeling so scared of going low because it didn't feel like I was on stable ground. And I was wondering if you guys have any input for that. My way out of it was just to always have sugar on me, literally sugar packets in my handbag in the car, like Alyssa and her fizzes.
Well, I
Alyssa, why did you
jump in?
Before this meeting, I actually had anxiety because of a low. That's why I told everyone, I'm like, I'm taking a bite of my fizzer just in case. I was running at 6.6. I'm like, just in case it goes low. Because in a stressful situation, you don't know how you would deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, that's the only thing we can do, is be prepared, unfortunately. I saw there was a question earlier about placebo, and I don't know where it went because the chat is going too fast for me to keep up with. But I found placebo to be amazing. It's actually one of the things that really helped stable. It made me feel like I'd landed on solid ground because it's such a stable, long acting in the background. Sally saying, my wife still doesn't believe me if I say I don't feel well, as she will say it's only diabetes. Oh, come on. If you want to get her on the chat, we'll all have a talking to with her. Although I must be honest, I thought I was the only one who didn't get sympathy from my husband. And I once got so pissed with him because he gives me like zero sympathy for diabetes at all. And I don't want sympathy, but I would like some special treatment now and again. And I put a message on Diabetic South Africans, and I was like, do you feel that you get special treatment from the people that you live with because you have diabetes? Expecting everyone to be like, yeah, of course, I get served tea in bed in the morning. And everyone was like, no way, no one cares. So I think we're all in it together, unfortunately. Corbis is saying we have no idea how much diabetics 1 or 2 suffer that can't afford medical aid. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you, Corbis. And we've been doing with Street Life, we've been doing a lot of work with public clinics, and it is hectic. Like even the access to insulins and the kind of insulins, yeah, it is very hectic.
Can I just add to that?
We are down to like the last 10 minutes. Please do. Go.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, like in terms of the public healthcare system, I really think that, I know we've had these conversations before, but I think we need to pick them up again, because the public healthcare system will give people they're so overwhelmed by the amount of patients that they don't take time to educate properly on insulin, on following a proper diet. And I think like they just give you like one box of test strips and they expect you to use it for the month. So I really think that is a conversation that we do need to pick up again.
And the insulin is human insulin, which is 2 before the insulins that we're on. So it's like human insulin, analog insulin, and now it's like the new analog insulin. So that's the bit that gets me, is that it's that feeling of disempowerment when you're doing everything right and your blood sugar is still whack. And if you don't have the right medication, that's why your blood sugar is still whack. We're gonna start. I've got an insulin project coming up, and I think it's a conversation we need to start having, and an advocacy effort we need to do is to make things more fair across public and private. Guys, I have a few like housekeeping things I have to do at the end, but before that, I have 2 last questions for us. Leon wants to talk about the dawn effect. But he first says, if nobody loves you or cares for you, at least you can love and care for yourself. I agree, Leon. So, why does my husband not bring me tea in bed in the morning? He's definitely not watching, so I can say this. If he was watching, I'd get in trouble. He's putting the children to bed. That's why he doesn't bring me tea in the morning. I think, Leon, this is also your question. Same, Leon, was his question. Does anyone have any tips about the dawn effect? So when your feet hit the floor in the morning and your blood sugar goes through the roof. Does anyone have that, and any ideas how to deal with it? Kirsten, what you got?
So I really, really struggled with this, and that is why I ended up going to my endocrinologist and talking to him about Levemir that I was on. I was on Levemir, and I then switched over to Tresiba after hearing about how wonderful Tresiba is. It's really frustrating. We all know how frustrating it is to have a high blood sugar level, but even worse when you've been high the whole night and then you wake up high, and that's how you begin your day. It's the most demotivating thing to wake up over 10 and just feel horrible. You feel like you haven't slept. You just know it's going to be a bad day, because now you're already starting the day just trying to get back down. I would seriously recommend chatting to your endocrinologist about changing your basal rate, which is your background insulin or your long-acting insulin, because your dawn effect is very heavily affected by your background insulin. It manages those 8 hours that you're sleeping overnight. And getting those sugar levels correct is key to like starting your day good, starting off on a good sugar level and moving forward from there.
I agree. Anyone else with any tips for the dawn effect? I found that I have to inject my short-acting as soon as I wake up, and then sometimes it takes an hour to kick in. So my dawn effect doesn't start in the middle of the night, like the 3 a.m. I know some people have that. Mine starts as soon as I wake up, and if I inject my short-acting then, and then I only eat breakfast when I notice my blood sugar leveling and starting to dip, then it seems to fix it. But an hour, I don't always have the patience for that. Always saying I have that all the time. It depends what I ate for dinner and what time I ate. Oh, that's interesting. Carbs at night tend to make me up so bad. Sadly, carbs at night tend to make me up so bad too. Kirsten did this amazing story about eating a pizza 2 weeks ago, and my main thought was, wow, you are so brave. You ate a pizza at night. Like, That's like
Never
half
again.
as perfect.
Yeah.
Never
No,
again.
no,
It's not worth it.
come on. No, it's not worth it. What I've started doing, and this is probably sad, but it works for me, is we make homemade pizza. So we'll make it at like 6 and eat with the kids. And then I grill aubergine slices, which are the most delicious thing on earth. And then you put the pizza stuff on top. And it's not crunchy like pizza, but you get all the flavors, at least. And then our last big question is Derek wants to know when they'll find a cure. Derek, I am there with you, buddy. When will they find a cure? Anyone?
Yeah.
Anyone?
Every week,
no.
apparently, there's something new.
Yeah.
I know. That's what
Who
we've
knows?
heard. Alyssa, how do you keep your sugar on a constant for it not to go too high or too low? There's a question for you.
I think it's nothing that I do, but it took me a while to learn which insulin best suits me. So I worked with my doctor, and that's how I got it to a level that it's stable.
Yeah, that's great. That's all we can do, I think. Also wanted to know, do you have to be referred by your GP to an endocrinologist? You don't, but you do have to call at least 3 months in advance because there are so few of them in the country, and so you've got to book a long time in advance. Vincent wants to know what's advisable sugar level when you wake up in the morning. Apparently it's between 4 and 7, Vincent, but last disclaimer of the night, guys, we are not medical specialists. Please do not adjust any of your medication based on anything we said. Okay, then my last bit of housekeeping. There's a training session for anyone who has questions about the Freestyle Libre. They offer free training sessions. There's one next week on Tuesday the 25th at 12:30. There we go. The link is going to go into the comments. And you can also use the app. So you can either use the reader or the app. Someone was asking earlier about, I don't even think we got to that one. Sorry, it was like about suggestions about CGM experiences. And I know that for me, it's made remote chatting to my endo a lot easier because on LibreView, you can upload all your stuff from like the last few weeks or months, and then they can immediately access it. So you don't have to go in, like I used to have to go in with my glucometer and then he would plug it into his computer. Archaic now all of a sudden. And then I just got told today about a type 1 diabetes advocacy workshop that is happening on the 14th of June, where we'll hear how young people are using advocacy initiatives to drive change. And it's specifically advocacy initiatives in Africa, which is fascinating because it'll be most like us. So I'm going to be sharing those details, but if everyone wants it, it's lifeforachild.org/workshop. I just found out about it today. It's only on the 14th of June, so I'll share details. Now I'm giving everyone one chance to say if you have a choice of questions. You can either answer what makes your life sweet, or you can answer what would you say to a diabetic who is struggling. Earl, you're up first.
What would I say to a diabetic who's struggling? I'd say, look, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You need to keep going. And you're going to be dealing with the highs and the lows, just like you do with everything else in life. So it's just a matter of just prioritizing your diabetes, thinking, 10, 15 years down the line, what do you want your quality of life to be like? And, if you start prioritizing your diabetes, you'll actually start making better choices. I mean, I'm not perfect. I made some bad choices. I made bad choices today with what I ate. You know what I mean? So, I mean, look, we're all human. And just and on that note, just don't be so hard on yourself. We all make mistakes, and it's okay as long as you just recover. And if you feel that it's rough today, just try again tomorrow and just repeat it. Just keep trying the next day,
etc., every day. I love it. Kirsten, you can choose what makes your life sweet or advice for a diabetic who's struggling.
I'm going to say what makes your life sweet. I think as a diabetic, it's super important to find an escape, to find something else that you really love in life that lets you kind of get away from the worries of diabetes. For me, it's hiking in the outdoors. Absolutely love being on Table Mountain or exploring and adventuring. It kind of just takes my mind off of things for a little bit. Also spending time with the dog, any kind of dog, family and friends, like support system, that all makes my life super sweet.
I love it. Matthew, what you got?
I'll take sweet for 10 points.
You get them.
So, look, if you had told me 7 months ago that I would be sitting here with all of you lovely people, I wouldn't have believed you. It was like being hit by a sledgehammer when Jude was diagnosed, and I really struggled. The biggest thing, not the biggest thing, everything's a struggle, as you all know, but I struggled not just being able to be with Jude without it being like that advert, the balloon, like constantly having to go, okay, all right, where are we at? Let me check you, not just sit down and play for an hour, So what makes my life sweet is realizing that, he's still my little boy, and we live in a time where we can have a conversation like this with people in different countries, in different states and different provinces, dealing with the same thing, sharing and learning. And like, this has made my journey so much better. I've learned so much from all of you tonight. So thank you so much. So
I agree.
Definitely that.
I will also say that with practice, you forget for a couple of hours at a time. Like I will fairly often go a couple of hours without remembering that I'm diabetic, and then be like, oh yeah, okay. So obviously that's not going to happen in the first year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you guys have done amazingly.
I'll practice forgetting.
Yeah. Alyssa, what makes your life sweet, or what would you say to a diabetic that's struggling?
Okay, so I would say to a diabetic that's struggling is, if I can do it, so can you.
Yeah, I agree. And Tuppy, you've gone sideways. Can you see us?
Can you see? Is it straight now?
No, but that's okay.
Is it better now?
What do you?
It's straight.
There we go.
Okay.
You're straight. What would you say to a diabetic who's struggling, or what makes your life sweet?
Just to be able to come in this time and just have the necessary means. People long ago didn't have, the necessary things to, maintain the diabetes and everything like that. So for me, I think I'm very grateful for having the Libra. I'm grateful for having the means to go to a doctor and just, and just have the necessary means in general.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you everyone for being here. We are 4 minutes over time, which is a miracle, because did you see how much I wouldn't stop talking? I was very excited to have this many type 1s all in one room, and I want to thank you all for being here, and thank you to our fantastic panelists for being here and for sharing your experiences. We hope to do more of these in future. I love that we can see the chat on the side. It's so exciting, and also my brain is spinning from trying to do too many things. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and hope to see you again soon. For those who missed part of the video, it will apparently be on Facebook on Diabetic South Africans. It's going to live there now. And we will try and catch up on the comments that we didn't get to today. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.